And we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery with our abundance of online guests joining us in the virtual studio as we embark together, please God, on a new Masechet Tamid, which is very exciting, drawing ever closer to the end of Seder Kodshim. So Masechet Tamid, named after the daily korban, the daily sacrifice that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, part in the morning, part in the evening. There's going to be a lot of exciting things for us to follow along with. It's not as, well, certainly the opening chapters are not as complicated as some of the other material that we've seen together. A little bit more straightforward. And not only that, ladies and gentlemen, but we will also see some things about the Beis Hamikdash, which is really, really nice. We're going to hopefully, please God, see the map again and figure out where everything is. It's going to describe to us some of the different areas of the Beis Hamikdash and where different things happened. I was hoping I would have a picture of the map of the Beis Hamikdash, but I might just have to hold one up. So apologies for that. I'll try and make it as easy to follow as I possibly can. And there we go. We've stalled for time, and now we have Philip on board as well. So let's wait for him to just log in, and then we'll get ourselves underway. Good evening, Philip. I hope you're doing well. We are going to get...
Yes, I'm well. Sorry we're late.
That's not a problem. It's great to have you on board. And I was just saying that we're starting Masechet Tamid together. And all being well, I'm going to have intersprinkled with the shir tonight. Hopefully we're going to have the map of the Beit HaMikdash available for you guys to see. Let's just get it there. You'll be able to see it there. Look at that. How special is that? That's not where we want it just now. We want it over here. No, you can't see it. Oh, come on. Here we go. Add existing image 4. There it is. Okay, so we're gonna get that up for you guys occasionally on the screen as well. So without further ado, therefore, let's get ourselves underway with chapter 1 of Masechet Tamid, Mishnah 1. And we're going to be talking about the Shmirah of the Beis Hamikdash. The Shmirah being the shifts of the guards that used to take care, the custodians, as it were, of the Beis Hamikdash. And they weren't there necessarily to stop burglars and to prevent theft. They were there for the honor and the dignity of the Beis Hamikdash. So we learn elsewhere that there were 24 watching posts. 21 of these watching posts were occupied by Leviim, and 3 were occupied by Kohanim. So the Mishnah starts off in Mishnah Aleph of chapter 1. B'shlosha makomas, in 3 places, HaKohanim shomrim. Let's get you the English. The Kohanim would guard the Beis HaMikdash. They would guard the Beis HaMikdash. The 3 places are as follows. Beveit Avtinas, Beveit HaNitzot, Beveit HaMoked. So let's get our map up on the screen. Let's see if we can figure out where these places are. Oh, would you believe it? It's tiny for you guys. So Beit Avtinas is up here in the top, the south side of the picture. Is that moving for you on the screen when I do it? No, it's not zoomed in. So difficult for you to see, really. I don't have a way of pointing these places out. But Beit Avtinas is up at the top. There's 3 kind of gates up near the top of the image, and the one on the left is where Beit Avtinas was. Beit HaNitzot, I forget exactly where that was, and Beit HaMokad will be, oh goodness me, it's somewhere else, isn't it? Beit HaMokad is in the bottom of the picture. Okay, so Beit HaNitzot and Beit HaMokad are at the bottom of the image. And if you can see the gate areas in the bottom right of the Beit HaMikdash, so Beit HaNitzot was over there, and Beit HaMokad is the larger one underneath the long vertical extension of the Heichal. So at the bottom there's the place called the Beit HaMokad. And the Beit HaMokad, we're going to speak more about soon. So, says the Mishnah, Beis Avtinas and Beis HaNitzos Hayu Aliyos. The Beit Avtinas and the Beit HaNitzot, they were on balconies. They were elevated positions which you accessed from the floor of the courtyard. And these were watch points for the Kohanim. Vaharovim Shamrim Sham. And young Kohanim, the young sprightly youths, as it were, of the Kohanim, they would be watching from there. Beis HaMokad, this other chamber called the Beis HaMokad, Kippah, it had a domed roof on the top of it, which you can kind of see with the oval shape in that section there at the bottom of the image. Ubayis Gadol Hayan, it was a big room, it was a big chamber. Mukaf Rovdin Shel Even, and it was surrounded, the chamber was surrounded by tiers of stone. The Ziknei Beis Av Yeshenim Sham, and this is where the Kohanim who were working in the Beis HaMikdash during that week, the shift, as it were, that is where they would be sleeping. So the tiers, there'd be like these long bleachers or long benches almost made out of stone. And they would use these flat surfaces as beds. And where they were sleeping was actually halachically kind of outside of the Beis HaMikdash perimeter. So it's very interesting because even though you can see it kind of like is a bit inside, it's also a bit outside of the confines of the Beis HaMikdash. And so that's how they were able to sleep on site, but not actually be sleeping in places where you wouldn't be allowed to sit or certainly wouldn't be allowed to sleep. Says the Mishnah, and these elders of the particular weekly shift, they would be holding onto the keys of the Azara, of the courtyard. So overnight, when they're sleeping and the Beis HaMikdash is all locked up, they're looking after the keys. Let's get rid of the picture now. The young Kohanim, Ish Kisasa Ba'aretz, they would be sleeping on the floor, and they would be sleeping on top of their clothes. They would use their clothes as pillows, nice and comfy. Lo hayu yesheinim b'vigdei kodesh, they wouldn't be sleeping on top of their uniforms for service in the Beis HaMikdash. Ela postin mekaplin u'manichin osantachas v'ashehem, but they would fold them up and they would place them under their heads. U'miskasin b'chsusatzman, and they would cover themselves with their own clothes. If one of them had a nocturnal emission, which is a big problem, it would make them tameh, it would make them impure. It would mean that they can't serve the next day in the Beis HaMikdash. So where are they going to purify themselves without going through the airspace of the courtyard? So the Mishnah says, Yotzei v'holech lo b'mesiba ha'holeches tachas abira. So they would need to be accessing the mikveh on the south side, on the complete other side of the Beis HaMikdash, but they can't go through the courtyard because they are impure. So they went through catacombs underneath the surface of the Beis HaMikdash. They went through tunnels that went underneath the Beis HaMikdash. There would be torches, candles that are burning on either side of this passageway until they came to the mikveh. And there was a furnace that would burn there, so that it would be nice and warm. And also a toilet, so that they could use the bathroom. And this was the way in which people were able to retain their dignity. If they came and they found that the chamber was locked, they would know that there's someone inside. Pasuach, and if it was open, they would know that it's free for them to be able to use. Yorad v'tavel, they would go down into the mikveh and immerse. Olav v'nistapag, and they would come up and they would dry up. V'nischamam keneged amadum, and they would warm up by the furnace. Then they could come back and they could sit with their Kohanic priestly colleagues. But once the gates were opened for the Beis HaMikdash and the service was about to start, they would have to go home, because even though they are pure, they would have to wait till nightfall before they're allowed to take part in Terumah and things like that. And so therefore, they would go home for that day and they'd get the day off work, essentially. Mishnah base. Mishnah base. We're going to be talking first about the first daily service in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, we might remember when we were going through the service of Yom Kippur in Maseches Yoma, that we would encounter some of the things that we're about to hear. So some of it might sound a little bit familiar. So we are now seeing this not from Yom Kippur perspective, but from the everyday perspective. So Misha, who wrote Lisra Mizbeach. So the first service is the Terumah Sedeshen, is the removal of the ashes that was taken from the altar and then eventually taken out of Yerushalayim. So we're going to see this in great detail. Misha, who wrote Lisra Mizbeach, the person or anyone who would want to remove the ashes from the Mizbeach, Mashkim, they'd have to get up really, really early. Vatovel ad shelo yavo hamamuneh. They would have to be finished in the mikveh before the appointed priest, the appointed kohen, who's going to oversee the lottery, who's going to see the allocation of roles and positions for that day. They're going to have to be ready and waiting, dressed and mikved before this person arrives. It was not always the same time when this person would arrive. Sometimes he would be there already once the rooster starts to sound out in the morning. Sometimes it would be a bit earlier, sometimes it would be a bit later. This person would come and he would be knocking on the door to come into the Beis HaMikdash, and they would open the gate for him. Amar lahen, he would then say, Mi shataval yavo v'yafis. Whoever has gone to the mikveh and is ready for work can come and join this lottery. Hey fisu, and then they would do the lottery. Zacha misha zacha, and whoever would win the lottery is going to have the privilege of removing the ashes. That's Mishnah base. Mishnah Gimel. Let's scroll down for you guys. Notal es hamafteach ufasach es hapishpesh. So this person is going to come. He's going to take the key from the elders and he's going to use it to open up the pishpesh or pishpash. And the the pishpash is a small door that led to the azara, that led to the courtyard. The nichnas mi beis hamoked la azara, and then people are going to be able to come from the beis hamoked, which is this sleeping chamber or the changing room. Could be another way of describing it. The nichnasu acharav, and the kohanim are going to follow on through. Ushtei avukos shel ur biadam, and they're going to be holding 2 torches of fire in their hand to be able to light the way. Don't forget, it's first thing in the morning. The roosters are crowing, but the sun is not yet up, so it's going to be quite dark. V'nechleku lishtei kitos, and they get divided up into 2 groups. There's going to be one group, Elu holchim ba'achsadra derech hamizrach. One group are going to walk around the porch from an easterly direction. Ve'elu holchim ba'achsadra derech hamarav, and the other group are going to walk along the achsadra, the porch area, from the western approach. Hayubodkin v'holchin ad shemegim l'makom beis osei chavitim. And what they're doing is they're searching and inspecting everything in the Beis HaMikdash until they reach the point of the place where they would do the chavitim, where they would do the pan offering, the griddle offering, where they would bake bread for the mincha of the kohen. Hiyu elu va'elu, so they would meet up in this point, and amru shalom, hakol shalom, and they would say shalom, everything is okay, everything is in its place, everything is ready to go. He'emidu osei chavitim lasos chavitim, and then it would instruct the person who's going to be in charge of preparing this bread for the mincha offering. They would instruct them to start that process, to start boiling the water and do everything that they need to do. Mishnah Daled. Misha Zacha Lisra Mizbeach, the person who has been allotted the privilege and the responsibility of sweeping away the ashes from the altar, which is the first service of the day. So he's been to the mikvah, but he is also going to have to wash his hands and his feet. to be able to do this particular avodah. So the kior, the basin where they would wash their hands and their feet, is on the other side of the mizbeach. So difficult to see if I haven't zoomed in for you guys, and I'll try and fix that for next week. But you've got the altar towards the central half of the page, and the kior is this kind of brownish golden circle to the right of it, which is on the far side of the courtyard from where they are. They've just come into the Azara from the Beit HaMokad, so they're quite a distance, and they're quite their sight, the line of sight is obscured for this kior. So what happens is as follows: the person who has been allocated this responsibility, he is going to remove the ashes. The Kohanim say to him, they're going to say to him, careful, just be careful that you don't touch anything until you've washed your hands and your feet from the kior, from the basin on the other side, which they're not going to be able to see him do. So he's going to have to find his way there to be able to do it. And the pan, which is going to be using to scoop up the ashes, made out of silver, it's on the corner of the ramp to the mizbeach on the western side. So they're not really going to realistically be able to see him so easily. Ein adam nichnas imo. No one can go in with him. V'lo ner biyadon. He can't be carrying a fire in his hands. He can't be carrying a torch in his hands. Ela mahalech l'or hamaracha. So he is only going to have the light of the fire on top of the mizbeach, on top of the altar, to be able to find his way. Lo hayu ro'ino. So they couldn't hear him. V'lo shomines kolo. And they wouldn't be able to hear his voice. They might be able to hear the soft patter of his bare feet on the stones, but that's about it. Ad sheshomin kol ha'etz she'asa ben katin muchni lakior. They're not really going to hear anything until they hear the sound of the kior being lifted up out of the hole in the ground. So let's try and picture this a little bit. So you've got this elaborate kior, the water supply, which has got these faucets, it's got these taps that go around it. Now, this water supply, quite an abundant water supply, has got a problem, because they're not going to be able to leave the water out overnight. Otherwise, it's going to be invalid for use the next day. So this fellow, Ben Katin, created a pulley system which would lower the kior under the surface of the Beis HaMikdash, would lower it into the ground, and then each morning they would wind it back up again. So he's going to go over to the other side of the Beis HaMikdash. He's going to raise up the kior from the ground. V'hein omrim higia eis. And when they're hearing this, they're going to realize that the time has come, that he has managed to get there, and he's going to be able to wash his hands and his feet. Says the Mishnah, Kidesh yadav v'raglav min kior. So he's going to wash his hands and his feet. Natal machtas hakesef. He's going to take the silver pan. V'ala l'rosh hamizbeach. He's going to walk up the ramp of the altar. Ufina es hagechalim helach v'helach. And he's going to scrape, or he's going to shift the coals around a little bit. V'chasa min ha'meukalos ha'pnimios. And he's going to scoop up some of the most consumed coals from the altar, v'yarad, and then he's going to come back down again. Higia l'ritzbah, he's going to get down to the ground level. Hafach panav latzafon, he's going to turn and face the north. Halach lemizracho shel kevesh ke'eser amos, he's going to walk eastwards about 10 amos from the bottom of the ramp. Savar es hegechalim al gabe haritzbah, and then he's going to pile up these coals on the floor. Rachok min hakevesh shloshav tfachim, about 3 handbreadths away from the ramp. Makom shenosnin muros ha'of v'dishon hamizbeach ha'panimi v'hamanora, and then he's going to be putting that in the place where the parts of the bird offering, the crop, as it were, of the bird offering, the food pouch of the birds, and the ashes that had been removed from the inner altar, and the ashes that were removed from the menorah, that's where he's going to pile all of these things up. And that's going to be the first mitzvah of the day, the first avoda of the day. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we complete chapter 1 of Maseches Tamid. So Mazel Tov, everybody, on finishing chapter 1. And without further ado, unless we've got any objections, we're going to jump into chapter 2. As we said, there's nothing massively complex. It's just more a case of being able to picture what we're talking about, all of the things going on in the Beis Hamikdash. So not always the easiest thing, but we can but try. Perek Beis, chapter 2, Mishnah Aleph. So the other Kohanim are not going to do anything until they see him coming down with the pan. So the Mishnah says, Ra'uhu echav shirad, his priestly colleagues are going to see him coming down the mizbeach with these ashes in his hand, in the pan. V'heim ratzu uvo, and they are going to now come out. Miharu v'kidshu yideim v'ragleim min ha-kiyor, and they are quickly and rapidly going to head over to the kiyor themselves so that they can wash their hands and their feet so that they can start the temple service. Natlu samagrafus, they're going to take some pitchforks because they're going to need to go up and clean the rest of the mizbeach. So they're going to take pitchforks. Ves hatsin noros, and they're going to take smaller spiky utensils. Maybe it's kind of like a rake. Va'alu l'rosh hamizbeach, and they're going to go up to the top of the mizbeach. Ha'evarim v'hapadarim, the limbs and the fats, shelonis aklu mibe'erev, that haven't been caught up and consumed in the fire of the night. Sonkin osam litzdadei hamizbeach, they are going to be scraped, or they're going to be moved over to the side of the mizbeach. They're going to be taken off the fire now. Im ein hatstadim machazikin, if there's not enough space for them to be able to do that, then sojim osam basovev al hakevesh, then they're going to arrange them on the ledge that went around Mizbeach as well. So wherever they can find places to move this stuff out of the way, it can't remain on the fire anymore, and that's going to be one of the responsibilities that they have to do first thing in the morning. Mishnah Beis, Heichelu ma'alin ba'efer agabe hatapuach. So what they're going to be doing now is the ashes that they need to clear away are going to be piled up in a tapuach. Tapuach is an apple, but it refers to this kind of dome-shaped pile that was in the middle of the mizbeach. The tapuach haya be'emsa mizbeach. This tapuach, this mound, was in the middle of the altar. Pa'amim alav kishlosh meyos kor. Sometimes it could get as big as 300 kor, about 300 liters. Uvargalin, and during the chagim, lo hayu bedashnin, they wouldn't clean it off. Mipnei shehu noila mizbeach. Perhaps counterintuitively, the pile of ashes that would accumulate on the top of the mizbeach was something that was beautiful for Hashem, because it means that he's got lots of his people coming to the Beis Hamikdash to bring sacrifices. So we would think that all of these gross, dirty ashes is actually a bit disrespectful, but actually the Mishnah tells us that this is pleasant and pleasing and beautiful for the Beis Hamikdash. Miyamav lo nisatzel hakohen milahotzi esadeshin. It never happened in all the days of the Beis Hamikdash that Kohanim were lazy in volunteering to do this job. It would seem that it was something that there would also be an element of excitement and pride in taking on this responsibility. And again, being the bin man in this day and age isn't seen as something that you rush to go and do. And yet, maintaining the Beis Hamikdash is something that was very respectable and very honorable to be able to take a part in. Mishnah Gimel. After the removal of the ashes, the fires have to be rebuilt. So we're going to see that there's two fires that get discussed in the Mishnah. There's the Ma'aracha Gdolah. There's the kind of main fireplace, the main fire pile, which is where most of the korbanos would be burnt up. So this is where they've taken away the fats and the limbs from the previous night, and they're going to have to put two new beams of wood to be able to get that fire going again. So that's one of the fires. So the Mishnah says, they're going to start by bringing logs, big logs, to be able to organize the wood for the fire, for the altar. Asks the Mishnah, are all types of wood kosher for this purpose? And the Mishnah answers, hey, yes they are. All types of wood are fit for use on the altar for burning up the korbanos. Chutz mishel zayis v'shel gefen, except for olive wood, wood from olive trees, and wood from grapevines. And the reason for this is because we don't want to risk diminishing the amount of grapes and olives that can be made available for the Beis Hamikdash. So you wouldn't be able to use olive wood, and you wouldn't be able to use wood from grapevines, but all other types of wood you'd be able to use. Aval ba'elu regilin, but these are the ones that they would usually use. Ben rubios shel ta'ena v'shel egos v'shel eitz shaman. They would usually use the young fresh branches from fig trees, from walnut trees, and from pinewood trees. And the reason for that is because these types of wood were more flammable than other trees, and that's why they would use them therefore for the altar in the Beis Hamikdash. Mishnah Daled. Sideh hamaracha gedola mizracha. They would assemble this large arrangement of wood on the eastern side of the mizbeach, v'chazisa mizracha, and they would leave an access point on the eastern side so they could access it. V'roshei hagizrin hapanimin hayunogin b'tapuach, and the inner end of this area of assembly of the wood logs would be touching the tapuach, would be touching the circular heap of ashes. V'revach haya bein hagzarim shahayu matzisem esa alisa misham, and there was space between the logs where they would put kindling twigs to be able to help the fire get started. So they would have other kindling wood in amongst these beams and amongst these logs to be able to get the fire growing again on this maracha. Mishnah Hey, to finish off the second perek and to finish off for this evening, all being well potentially, unless we decide to go on. So Mishnah Hey, there was a second maracha, there was a second wood pile, which was made usually with good fig branches, and on this pile, this is where they would get the coals to be able to burn the incense on the inner mizbeach, on the inner altar. So this is on the western side of the mizbeach. Bararu misham atzei te'ena yafin. From this other area, they're going to take the best fig wood that they've got there, the sadeh hamaracha shniya lakatares, where they're going to arrange the wood pile for burning the katares, for creating the coals to burn the katares. Mikeneged keren ma'aravis deromis, which is going to be on the southwestern corner of the altar. Mashuch min hakeren klapeit safan arba amas, which is going to be back from the northern side by 4 amos. So let's have a look. Yeah, it's going to be difficult to see because I can't zoom in for you at the moment with the picture. But you've got the altar over here in the middle of the picture. You've got the black circle on top of the altar, which is the tapuach. And then you've got the ma'aracha gadola on the top left side. And on the top right side, you've got the smaller ma'aracha for the katares, the wood pile that's going to be used for the katares. So those are the 2 log piles that we've been talking about. Continues the Mishnah. Where am I? Yeah, ba'omed chamesh tseim gechalim, and the amount of coals that they had, there would be enough there to generate about 5 sa'ah of coals, which is a pretty sizable amount. Ubeshabbos ba'omed shmonas sa'in gechalim. On Shabbos, it would need to be big enough to produce 8 sa'in of coals. Because they would also have to be able to put 2 bowls of frankincense which accompanied the showbread, that was also going to be burnt up. So there has to be enough coals generating enough heat to be able to burn these things up. And the limbs and the fat that hadn't burnt up during the night, these are going to be returned now to the large wood pile to be able to be finished off. They're going to kindle these two arrangements, these two log piles, with fire. The yardu uvar lahen lelishkas hagazis, and then they are going to come down to off the mizbeach, and they are going to come to the lishkas hagazis to be able to now draw the other lots. So where is the lishkas hagazis? The lishkas hagazis is down in the bottom of the diagram in the kind of purpley shaped rectangle. So let's get it up for you on the screen. So in the middle, as it were, the middle line of the Beis Hamikdash, if you look at the bottom there, there's kind of a purple colored box. That is the Lishkas Hagazis. That means the chamber of hewn stone. And that's where they're going to be coming to next to be able to continue with the next part of the lottery process. So Mazel Tov, everybody, on completing chapter 2 of Maseches Tamid. Let's just see. Should we leave it there for today, folks, and continue with the next chapter next week? Let's do that. So to all those joining us and watching with us, congratulations, Mazel Tov, and we will see you next week, please God. We'll be able to continue with chapter 3 and onwards with Maseches Tamid. But for now, have a wonderful and meaningful night.